The problem, man, is when you're a young entrepreneur and you're negotiating an acquisition, like making an acquisition part of your strategy is such a risky bet. Like roses are red, violets are blue, like deals don't go through, right?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Next Big Thing HQ, where we interview founders and showcase startups raising capital via Reg CF. Today, we have a real treat for you. If you don't know him, I guarantee you've seen his content before, going from podcast to short form content, generating over 2 billion views. He's an inspiration for me and truly a success story, going from taping up the cover of Forbes magazines on his dorm wall to now being in Forbes 30 Under 30 at 23. He went from being an OG fan of My First Million to now close friends with the host of My First Million, Sam Parr. And he went from idolizing and studying the founders of Morning Brew to getting acquired by Morning Brew. Michael Sikand, thank you for coming on.
Dude, it's great to be here. What you're doing reminds me a lot of what I did in the early days, which was starting a podcast. It was called Our Future, and my domain was Our Future HQ. So definitely some similar DNA in both of our brands for what we're up to. So it's cool to be here, man.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. So you started a podcast and you did 150 episodes within a little over a year. And for anyone who doesn't do a podcast, I don't think they understand, one, how hard that is to do that many episodes in such a short time, and two, the amount of effort it takes and the amount of focus on a daily basis. So walk us through the beginning, your story of just getting started in the podcast industry.
Yeah, totally. I was, just super excited about life. Like I was super just motivated to do something, but I had never really found something that I could like put all my energy into. I'd tried to build like mobile apps in high school, like didn't have the tools to be able to do it. Didn't really like have a coding or tech background, but I was always, familiar with like the Adobe suite and Photoshop and like being creative and being able to write and speak well. So a podcast was just an awesome consummation of all the kind of characteristics and skills that I had to apply. And it was something that I could do all on my own. I could edit my own audio. I could, bring out the microphone. I could chop up clips. So it just came really natural to me. And with COVID, a lot of these business leaders were kind of stuck at home. They had more time on their hands. So I really just kind of exploited that. And, I was the kid who was saying, I'm 20 years old and I'd love to interview you. And I think I was probably one of the earlier people who did that. I know there were some kids who were doing this whole podcast thing before me. But yeah, I felt like I came in at the right time to get some big interviews, and it didn't feel like work at all. I really loved it. And just being a conversationalist in business was my passion before even the podcast. So it was almost like I loved talking about business, and the podcast meant I never had to leave it to chance. I could do it 3 times a week with incredible people and just nerd the hell out on what inspired me and what fascinated me.
Yeah, and it's really a vessel to talk to people that you wouldn't have access to talk to unless you had a podcast or a platform to have them on and to really have nice, engaging conversation and to get it to the details. So that's what I love about it. And clearly you took advantage of it. And you were also coined the king of cold emails. So how did that skill help set up, podcasts with Mark Rudolph, right? And I'm pretty sure the CMO of Chipotle, another C-suite of Netflix. How'd you get coined the king of cold emails? And what was so special about your emails?
Yeah, it would always be just positioning this podcast as like, the next best thing since sliced bread. Like, I feel like that's the power of startup founders, right? In the earlier phases is making what they're doing appear and seem to be so much more special and big than it is. Even though I had only a few hundred listeners, I would, kind of exaggerate my presence. And I would say, this is the go-to business podcast for young people. And I would just really rope people in with this strong pitch. And I had this template of like 4 lines of like, my name's Michael. I'm 20 years old. I've interviewed, X, Y, and Z people, and I'd love to have you on the show as well. And I feel like that was just a really sweet spot in the world of podcasting, where a lot of the people I was reaching out to saw how big the industry was getting, but probably hadn't been interviewed before. I interviewed a lot of people that didn't have like street value, wouldn't be recognized on the street, but had like incredible clout and credibility in their industry. So I kind of reached out, gave them a platform, and look, everybody loves to talk about themselves, right? So I really exploited that nature of human psychology to, just want to talk.
Yeah. And you do 150 episodes. You're having these big guests on, but then you decide to pivot into short form content. So first question, was it tough to pivot into short form content? Because I'm sure you built up some sort of emotional connection with doing these podcasts. You enjoyed it clearly to do 150 episodes. And 2, what really led you into that inflection point of deciding to make that pivot into short form content?
Yeah, man, I feel like I got impatient, right? Like if I had continued doing those interviews, I'm sure that I could be at a pretty nice critical mass of audience right now. Maybe not. I'd like to think so with the quality of the content. But, I was done with building in silence, right? I was done with kind of doing something that I wasn't able to attract enough eyeballs or listeners into. And I was chopping up clips of my podcast and putting it on TikTok, and it was driving some growth, but not a lot. But I was like, why should I do a podcast when I can just like create content for people where they are, TikTok, right? Why do I need to bring them away from the place they're consuming? And because my brand was always designed around Gen Z, I was like, well, I've got to create content that serves them where they are. And, our future's short form pivot was, meet your customer where they exist, where they spend their time and on the platforms they frequent.
I find it interesting. The audience that was already following the podcast would also want to consume the short form content because it was the most
Absolutely.
digestible business content out there. And there's a common theme that I see in your story where you've always positioned yourself at the right place at the right time. So podcast before it got super saturated, you were doing it and you did volume, just a ton of episodes. And then you got into TikTok in the earlier stages before now where it's extremely saturated and it's probably really hard to break into. So you start creating our future TikToks. And what was the moment where you realized, wait, I could turn this into a business?
I knew that if I locked myself in my room and created 2 videos per day, I did it all by myself. I did all the editing. I found all the B-roll, right? I did it 100% by myself. And I knew that if with the skills I had and the time I had at the end of that summer before my senior year of college, I knew that if I just focused and sat in front of my computer and made these scripts, that I would be able to build a business out of it. Because I knew that once I had a decent amount of followers, and more importantly, once I could get this format to hit consistent viewership, I could charge advertisers because, they would be able to get good value out of it, right? Because these videos perform well. I also had great knowledge into how to create an organic and natural advertisement. So I think the ability to be able to like sell and tell stories for brands is just so important for creators. Not a lot of them are great at it. So having that creativity to be able to provide value to your customers, which are the advertisers that are actually paying, is so important. So I knew if I kept building these business videos, I could 100% organically and naturally integrate companies that wanted to promote their products into the content. So I knew the format was perfect for it. I just had to grind and build an audience for a couple of months to get to a critical mass and then just roll out the money, right? Just roll out the brand deals. And, it was a good time to be in marketing because a lot of these companies were just throwing money, in the zero interest rate phenomenon, like, post-COVID, right? Like money was free and growth and marketing were top of mind for so many different companies. I was able to tap into those budgets. So it was good timing for sure.
So what was the discovery of your format? Because your format is a very unique format. I mean, obviously now a lot of people are copying the format that you created.
Not as much anymore. Yeah, not as much,
Right.
Not as unique anymore.
But it's not as unique because it was so good, because it was so engaging. And people are like, oh, this is the format that we need to use going forward. But you were one of the first people, at least in business, to create that format. So what was the genesis of that format? And how'd you know that this is going to be the format going forward because it's the most engaging?
Yeah, I mean, dude, entrepreneurs just look at what other entrepreneurs do and then take the elements of what's working and then apply it to their business, right? So, I mean, Sam Walton kind of screams this from the rooftops with his book in that he just looked at what other retailers were doing and just combined it into his own unique thing. And that's what entrepreneurs have been doing for hundreds of years. So I saw a guy doing my particular style of content in the sports niche. And I was like, well, I can just do that for business. So that is exactly what our future became, is a talking head with really engaging B-roll. And it was a disruptive format for sure. I think the guy had been doing it for a year when I started doing his style, and it was still very early on the format. And it was very disruptive and fascinating style to bring business content to, Instead of reading a Wall Street Journal article, I could tell you about this incredible founder in 60 seconds in such an engaging way. And yeah, it was really about just like these bite-sized business stories that people absolutely loved and ate up.
What I love is that you can tell the same story that a Wall Street article will tell that, probably takes about 5 minutes to read. You can tell it in under 30 seconds. And I think that's honestly harder than to just write an article that takes 5 minutes to read, because in 30 seconds, you have to be very selective with the words you use, the story that you convey. So what is your process of creating a good TikTok story?
It's all about the hook, right? The hook has to be either outrageous, controversial, or nonsensical, right? Something that's got to break the ice with the viewer, something that's going to smash their schema, right? Something that's going to blow their mind. That's what's going to keep them through those first 3 to 5 seconds of the hook. And then it's going to carry them through the rest of the story. The rest is narrative building, right? So it's building context after the hook, right? So kind of explaining what led up to this. I asked ChatGPT to formulate my format, and it was it's very similar to Pixar's storytelling format where it's like once upon a time, but, and then finally, right? So that's exactly kind of how my stories are written, is in that format where it's like, did this, but this happened, but then they had to do this. Like, it's just like kind of a journey with ups and downs. And that's kind of what business is. So it's, cool to be able to apply that in that 60-second landscape.
Did you do that intentionally when you were writing the TikTok scripts, or did you end up realizing that at the end, like, wait a minute, I was writing a story very similar to how they write the Pixar movies?
That was something I figured out a lot later when I saw the kind of viral. I think it was Trung Fan who found out, like, made a tweet about that. And it was like, oh my God, this is exactly what it is. And it's because storytelling, like the hero's journey, which was like Joseph Campbell or whatever, George Lucas used it in Star Wars. Like, it's like the very essence of how we communicate was like through storytelling, like for humans for thousands of years, right?
Yeah.
So it's ingrained in our bodies and minds to want to hear how these things play out and to consume them in this way. So yeah, it's very much a kind of structure. It's very much a repeatable format, right?
Yeah.
For how this is all done. It just, the stories are different, but the structure of them is the same across all mediums.
Yeah. And I think there's a saying that history is written in stories, right? Where it just shows you the power behind the stories. If you can convey a good story, everyone's going to end up believing, that's the truth, or that's what they're going to listen to in the end. Just because it's been in the past and like it will always be in the future, just stories are that powerful. Now, we look at short form content now, and I assume with AI, it's a lot easier to create short form content than it was, let's say, in 2020 compared to now. So there's more influx of, supply of people creating short form content. So it's harder to break into it. How do you see short form content kind of evolving in the future going forward the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think short form video is just like great for top of mind awareness and like getting your name out there, getting people to know who you are. But I think that it's very limited in that people don't really convert, right? People don't typically leave these platforms when they learn about something on them. They just want to stay there. And all the value of that is for TikTok to then, really get the ad dollars and build the $1 trillion business that they have, right? So yeah, short form's hard, man. It's very saturated right now. I mean, our growth rates have slowed tremendously, and it's very hard for new people to break in and build audiences as quickly as they used to. The number of accounts on TikTok that have gotten to 100 million followers, I don't think someone's gotten to 100 million followers since like 2021, which was
Really?
like, I think Selena Gomez. So it's much harder to grow. And as more content is flooded in, people don't feel the need to actually follow, right? So the metrics for audience size or subscribers are very different, right? Because people don't feel that behavioral need. So the behavior's changed from the consumers, and that I'm just going to trust this For You page to give me what I like and resurface the stuff that I've already seen. And I don't really need to follow a creator to see their content. And it's very much this transitory in the moment entertainment thing versus establishing a deep affinity to a certain creator. So that's where long form content comes in. And I think we've seen a reversion recently from short form being, the next best thing. And now it's short form's important, but it's much more important to have a long form presence and really build that fan affinity and customers who care about you, care about your story, and really support your brand.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. It's now the consumer realize they don't have to follow the account because the algorithm will keep showing them what they like. So there's no real value in the follow because they know that they're going to keep getting it anyways. And I've always thought of content as a sales funnel where you have short form content up top and then like clips, like 4, 5, 6 minute clips from like a podcast. And then you try and funnel them all the way down to the overall podcast to listen to the podcast. And if you can do that, there's a much higher version of a conversion ratio than just converting them from seeing a short form or a TikTok.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I mean, it's also like YouTube. I just advise everyone to kind of build on long form YouTube because it has the same like affinity as you might get through an audio podcast, somewhat, maybe a little less, but there's also discovery. So you have not only an algorithm that's driving discovery, but you have the ability to really create fans out of your viewers is the advice I give. And that's what we're trying to do with our new podcast, right? We relaunched a pod with Morning Brew. And even though we got a podcast with Morning Brew and, we have some social capital and, we have amazing people to talk about and great thumbnails and stories, it's still so hard to get traction and growth on YouTube.
It's a decade game, right? You can't play it just on a month-to-month basis or a year basis. You have to play it with the mind, with the goal of, I'm going to do this for the next decade, and that's how I'm going to win, right?
Yeah.
You look at like Tim Ferriss, Lex Fridman, Chris Williamson, they've been going at it for so long. But let's talk about the new podcast, right? I watched your new episode with Austin a couple times. That was a great episode. Seeing him on. So you're 25 episodes in, and Simran, your co-founder, he had a great LinkedIn post that I kind of want to talk about. He said, 25 episodes into our future podcast, and what I love most is the exposure we give young founders. Our coverage gets them hundreds, thousands, and millions of views, gets them leads, DMs, interest from top supporters, and top talent. Now folks are reaching out to Michael and I to announce fundraising rounds with us over traditional media outlets. So talk to us about that and the exposure you're giving these young founders with talking about them coming on the podcast and announcing that they're fundraising rounds compared to the traditional news outlets.
Yeah, dude, there's never really been like a dedicated media source towards like young founders. The Forbes under 30 list is the greatest example of like, this is the go-to source for anybody who has insane potential in this world and is doing big things at a young age. There's no podcast version of that. There's no like real like dedicated media brand for it. So that was the niche we were trying to build with our future is let's create the kind of ultimate platform to highlight the most successful young people building companies. So that's the thesis behind the new pod. So we typically focus on, young, mid-20s, late 20s founders who have raised a ton of money or going after a really big and exciting problem. So yeah, that's the essence of this show. And it's been fun. It's a really exciting time. It's been hard to grow it for sure because, it just takes time, as I said, for any long form product. And it's something I've learned a lot. Like I've matured in media. I used to think I could blitz scale or cheat my way to building a valuable media company. And, I took a few shortcuts with our future and it ended up well for us. And we got a big win out of it. But the real way to win a media is to kind of own it all yourself and do it for 5-10 years and really wait for that inflection point because, there's a great graphic I've seen where it's like, this isn't worth it. And then right when people say it isn't worth it, there's an exponential curve that comes right after.
Yeah. I've been toying with this a lot where just people tend to like to put a price tag or value on things that aren't scalable. Like I think if we take an example, you doing short form content at the beginning. I mean, creating that short form content had to take hours upon hours upon hours. And it's really tough. And there's no way you can really scale that because it takes so much of your time, but you start to learn the skills. And then once you start to learn those skills, that's what then becomes scalable. And then you understand how to format it, scale it. And then you see the outcome getting acquired by Morning Brew. I mean, I don't know if you saw it when you first started doing the short form content. Paul Graham says, you want to do the things that aren't scalable in the beginning, and then you achieve the result you want to achieve.
Right.
So,
I mean, just look at how automated things are now versus how they were at the beginning. I used to do all my own scripting, all my own writing, all my own editing, all my own posting. Most of that's automated. The only value left in it for me, the highest leverage position in the business for me for the videos is putting that Picasso touch on it, right? So somebody finds the stories, writes them out for me like in 2 pages, and I dumb them down to 60 seconds. That's my talent. My ability to formulate a story in a short period of time is my greatest talent to the business. I could never fire myself from that. There's nobody who can quite has as much experience as me in this particular category to be able to do it. So that's where I have to remain. But over time, that the goal was to just stay in that place, get to that spot where I'm at right now, where I'm taking this very high level approach and I'm just focused on the highest leverage activity that is connected to like my core skill as a founder and CEO.
So do you have some sort of creative process you follow in order to really hone in on that skill? And I'm assuming you have to be in the right headspace, get yourself in the right headspace to really get the best story out of kind of a 2-page report. So can you walk us through maybe what your creative process is like, what you do in order to get in that kind of mindset where you can come up with the best story possible?
Yeah, dude. I mean, it's just like I've been in the gym on this for like 3 years. So it's just like ingrained into my mind. Like my formula is very like much a part of like, my brain matter. So I just look at like this long story and then I just start to cut parts that I don't care about and people don't care about because I just kind of like know what matters, right? And it's just something that I've learned over all the creation of these videos and subconsciously attaching a view number to a video and just really understanding it deep down. And I wouldn't say there's like a particular creative format other than trying to pare things down and follow that structure of this happened, then this happened, but then really getting to the end. So it's very much ingrained. I wouldn't say there's like a repeatable or scalable format or kind of way to emulate it.
That makes sense. I mean, I guess it's kind of like telling someone how to bench 225 who's never benched 225 before. You can't tell them. They just have to do reps in the gym,
right?
And put in the time.
Reps.
And
right.
Then eventually you figure it out, but you can't just go from not ever being in the gym to all of a sudden just benching 225.
Written 1,000 of these stories or more, 1,100 of these stories.
You just have the intuition at this point. You just know. And I think that's part of the skill, and that's what you can't teach. You just get that from experience and doing what's not scalable, right? Just doing it over and over and over again. So when we talk about
Absolutely.
scaling though, what were the first few hires you made and what was that process like? Because, you're 21, 22, right? You have to make a couple of hires. And so how are you pitching to these talents, these people to try and build a company, to try and scale a company? What was that process like? And then also too, getting Simran on and joining as a co-founder, right? So can you walk us through that process and turning it from you creating it, doing all the work, to then the automation scaling?
Yeah. So like at first you have to figure out like, what should I fire myself from first? And I actually made a mistake. I tried to fire myself from the script writing part. So I tried to hire this kid who was like an English major who was also doing a business minor. I'm like, oh, he'd be a great fit. But,
Yeah.
he looked at me one night and we were trying to work together for a week. And he looked at me, he's like, Mike, like this is your superpower. Like you can't outsource this, right? And it's still the thing that I do to this day. It's something I can't outsource. Nobody can write the stories better than me because that's my natural intrinsic talent in the industry. So then it was like, okay, the video editing takes so much time, right? There's people who are faster, more experienced, and more talented in video editing, right? I never went to school for video editing. I never really got deep in learning Adobe Premiere or motion graphics. So it was finding somebody who could edit the videos. The minute my time was freed from editing the videos, then I could focus on sales, right? Like, how do I actually make money? Because you're just doing a hobby until you make money. So then it was reaching out to brands, right? Setting up partnerships, writing the scripts, to make sure that those advertisements performed, right? And the brands got value. So that is where my time shifted. Then the time shifted to, okay, like, let's look higher level. We have sales, but like, what about growth? How can the founder think about growth? And now kind of the production of the product is more automated, right? So you're pushing out the Tesla Model S or whatever. How do I now produce a new car or a Model 3? So I went and acquired this other creator named Jackson, who was also making bite-sized business content. And I kind of looked at it through like a Rupert Murdoch, Logan Roy perspective of like, how do I build a media network? How do I build a media company with multiple creators and talent under the brand, like Dave Portnoy, like Barstool. Yeah. And I was able to acquire him, and I had the cash to do that because, I had turned it into a business, acquired his page, put him on a salary, right? And that now he's making videos and we double our output and we grow twice as fast, right? So that was like one of the highest leverage moves that I made from like a bird's eye view on the business of how do we actually build this into something bigger. And I was able to get there because as a founder, you have to climb the ladder by delegating. So you fire yourself from the tasks that take all your time and doing the whole production process of building a product, shipping a product, maintaining a product, and then you get higher. And the higher you climb on the ladder, the more things you fire yourself from at the minutia, the low level, then you can see way down into the distance. You can see down into the landscape, right? Of like the sunset. This is where we need to be going. And then you can point that way and recruit people around you to then also help you because you have the vision, you know where you're going, and you know exactly what you need to get there. Simi joined the company. We were really good friends. He was doing a podcast at the same time I was. He discovered me through my pod. And he's a very complementary skill set to me. He's incredible at like operations, negotiation. He has a very strong mind. I'm very much dilly-daddling. I change my mind a lot. I'm driven by emotion and passion, and my work output is very related to like how I'm feeling. He's just like an ox, right? Like he can work all day. He can do all these things that I wasn't good at. So I brought him to be COO, and then bringing him on, I was able to tap into his expertise. He was going to be a lot better at our next business division of our future, which was not ads, but doing agency. So, that our first deal that I got was the My First Million podcast clips. And I'd won a challenge with them. And then I had a HubSpot acquire the page for me, charge them a monthly retainer. And that was always my plan. It was like, I know I can do it, and we're going to end up with a monthly retainer. When I heard about the challenge they talked about on the show, $5,000 for anybody who can make us go viral, I knew I could do it. It was also just like being in the right place at the right time. Like I had armed myself with the skill set to then put myself in position to like do this amazing business deal with my idols, this podcast that I loved, and then scaled that into a business. We ended up with all of HubSpot's short form media that we continue with to this day. We still manage that account. That was able to grow our business tremendously. Then we were able to take that client with HubSpot. Oh, we do content for B2B software. Every B2B software company wants to be a content company now because HubSpot's leading the way. We got the world's best client. So then we just started selling other clients like Zapier and HubSpot and Start Engine and Dropbox. And now we kind of have this suite of clients, and we were able to build this agency division. And, media is hard. It's hard to make money through just ads. So agency turned out to be the higher leverage business opportunity, in that revenues came on a monthly recurring level versus one-off advertisements that depend on performance. And it's like unpredictable the amount of views you're getting with these algorithms. So yeah, Simi was able to lead the charge on that new division and grow it into a level where we could become an acquirable business because we had consistent MRR.
Did you know you were going to create an agency business when you first started? Or was it one of those things where, okay. And then when you got the first contract with My First Million, was that the first 5,000 MRR that you started making with the
first 5,000 MRR? I was over the moon. I was like, oh my God, like 5,000 MRR? That's insane. Like I could live anywhere. After I graduate at Michigan, I can go live in LA and I can have an apartment, right? I can just like get a Porsche or something. Like I was just like, oh my God, I can be an independent business person. And it was life-changing for sure.
That's awesome. And I'm assuming once you got that first 5,000, obviously you're on cloud nine, but you also know, wait, this is momentum. Why don't I go try and pitch a couple other people and see if I can do a couple, basically start the agency. Since I have this momentum, if I can get a couple other companies to start doing this and just scale and build out. And then once you had that 5,000, did that really help allow you to recruit more talent? Because you know, okay, this is consistent money coming in. So I know I have consistent money coming in.
We just kind of reinvested it back into the agency business and grew that, right? Because we could grow that a lot faster than the ads business because our followers, it takes time for followers and audience to scale. The agency, we could more be active in building that faster because that's just the problem with media. You can go and acquire more pages and such, but then it was just a better business opportunity to go with the agency. And it was like pretty close after Simi joined, like January or February, we started talking with Morning Brew and like Austin on the phone to me. I was in my apartment in Michigan and he mentioned acquisition and, it got me excited, but I was like, fuck that. Absolutely not. Like, we're going to build a giant. I wanted to destroy Morning Brew, right? I wanted to build like the next Bloomberg. And that was me and Simi's opinion that we were going to join together and we were going to go raise money with our stats and our strong business. We were going to go raise money. And we ended up building the slide deck and we pitched all these investors and we actually had interest. We had like a former Disney president who was going to put in the first check. And then we got like the founder of Kayak who wanted his venture firm to put in the next. But then we also started talking with HubSpot about like potentially joining them. And we ended up being like, me and Simi kind of just decided, we were like, you know what? We got to think strategically here. Does it make sense for us to go out and build this agency business and like keep trying to build this media network? Or should we just get acquired and get that win because this business isn't as scalable as we'd like it to be? Why don't we just get this win, get this resume, get some cash, like set ourselves up a little bit and feel comfortable? And then let's go out and build another business together in the future. We're going to have to do an acqui-hire, of course, but that's just the nature of our business. It's very dependent on the people who actually run it in media and agency. But that's what's going to get us to that billion-dollar opportunity one day. So we traded short-term revenues for social clout and a win. And it was great. We got it done. The challenge is it took us a really long time to get an acquisition deal done. And
how long
I don't know where we'd be if we hadn't been able to do it. It took a year. And the problem, man, is when you're a young entrepreneur and you're negotiating an acquisition, like making an acquisition part of your strategy is such a risky bet. Like roses are red, violets are blue, like deals don't go through, right? So it's such a risky bet to put your eggs in that basket. And it's what we did because we were like, let's just try and bet on this. We have a good business. We can live in this sick house in Austin. We got this like dope ass 2-story modern home and we had a good life. We were making decent money and we were able to pay ourselves well with what we had. And we were still, growing somewhat, but it was all about just like getting that win. And like we put all our eggs in that basket, worked really hard to try and get the business in a position to get it sold. And, we ended up getting it done, which was a huge blessing. And now we're, over a year into our time at Morning Brew. You got about like 10 months left on our contract. And, our goal is just to continue to crush it, do the best work we can. And I'm the kind of guy, if I have a job, I want to be really good at it. I want to excel and I want to impress the people who took a chance on me. And I wanted to open more doors. So, hopefully me and Simi will start a new business after our time at Morning Brew and maybe we get to keep the podcast, but it was all part of the strategic vision, dude, right? To get a win and then go out and build another kind of business because media is dope and it's so fun. It's a great place to start and it was a blast, but there's much better business opportunities and models to build like generational wealth for yourself and to build real enterprise value than media. So that was the bet. That was the gamble. But we also stopped growing a little bit, right? Like when we started having acquisition talks all the way until we sold, like we kind of like stopped growing the business that much, right? Because we were just like, oh, like we can just sell it. Like, and that's
was that
a dangerous,
more the focus, right?
Which was risky because it might not have happened. Like it's still like a lot of things like just went our way in the right moment with that deal. But yeah, I mean, it was risky for sure what we chose to do. And I would actually counsel founders not to do what we did because we got lucky. You never want all your business to depend on luck, another person making a decision on you. You want to control your destiny. So don't ever let an acquisition offer or a conversation about it or the idea of it. It's very toxic. It really pollutes your mind. So don't let it stop your business from growing because it's kind of one of the worst things that can happen.
So looking back, is there any part of you that maybe regrets a little bit going the acquisition route just because of, that was your baby, right? What you did with Our Future, that was your baby. You spent so much time, energy, effort went into that. Is there any part of maybe that emotional connection where you're like, I kind of wish I could still have it just because I spent so much time, maybe like short term?
No, I don't have any regrets about it. I think it was the best decision that we could have made for our business. Being attached to the Morning Brew name and business media, like we sold to a goated company. Like if you
those
sell
are your
to
idols.
Yeah, exactly. And your idols become your rivals and your idols become your friends and your phone contacts. I don't regret any part of it because, we've been able to, I've been able to live and focus on other things in life. And I love our future. It's great, but I ended up losing a little bit of passion for it, I think. And, I'm someone who likes to I'm a very serial guy. Like I like to build a business from 0 to 1 versus like building it from 1 to 10 or 1 to 100. So yeah, I'm more of an early stage guy. And I just feel like that was the best thing for our future to legitimize it after a couple of years and move on to the next thing.
So you talked a couple times on several different podcasts about how the acquisition is really cool, but a lot of people don't talk about post-acquisition, what's going on in the entrepreneur's head after the acquisition. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that and kind of how your mind kind of wandered after you made the acquisition. I'm sure you go from the highest highs to then all of a sudden maybe back down to reality or kind of thinking about what's next.
Yeah, dude, it's tough because once you know you can do it, it's like there's a lot of anxiety. Like, am I going to be able to find something? It's like when you break up with a girl, am I going to be able to find a girl who's better and makes me as happy? Like, you just get, of course you will, but you get
A little
nervous
bit
and
of doubt
anxious.
creep in a little bit.
A little bit of doubt creeps in. It's like, damn, like, it's also like once the buzz wears off, it's like, this is just normal now. Like people stop caring. Like we had like such a big announcement. Everybody was like following us. Like, it was like, you got all these accomplishments in this press, and then it all kind of went away. And it's like, okay, these guys just did an acqui-hire and made a little bit of money, but not a lot. And, now they're just, working for Morning Brew and they're pushing their agency to everyone they can. And it definitely fades, right? But it was still just such a great stamp. And I still have so much pride in what we were able to do. But now I'm just like, damn, like, feel like the industry I went into, I don't have a ton of like good business ideas that I'm passionate about right now. So I'm a little anxious. I'm not finding that, but like, I know it'll come to me. I just, have to like be chill, and just like kind of let life happen. We're all anxious people. As you're young, you think like your next thing's going to be your last thing. Your next house is going to be your last house. Your next car's going to be It's not the case, right? You just got to chill, go along for the ride, continue to do hard work and meet new people and expose yourself to new opportunities and experiences, which will open your mind to new opportunity and new business ideas.
Yeah. I've always had the thought process of just keep moving and keep doing something and you will increase the surface area of luck happening. And as long as you can do
just
that,
keep moving.
And it makes life more fun because you always get to do something new. You always get to learn. And so
keep trying new things, keep meeting new people like what you're doing.
Yeah. And I think the podcast is kind of one of the best ways to at least get one foot in the door and to just start doing something. Yeah, and I'm sure you kind of feel the same thing.
Dude, I was offered like countless jobs through the podcast. It was like, oh, come work for me, build my social media, right? Like be my intern. It was awesome. It just opens a lot of doors. And even with our new pod, like I get to meet the smartest entrepreneurs in this fucking country every week. And I get to talk to them and I get to learn their insights and I get to provide value to them. I get to blow their stories up with the clips and such of the pod. So we've got a flywheel going of like, we're not only meeting CMOs at these huge software companies. I'm deeper in sales now. I'm learning sales. We're about to launch my first long form YouTube video for our future. So I'm learning all these new things, which is great. They haven't really coalesced into like, okay, let me take these new experiences and like find a problem within them. It hasn't happened yet, but it's been great to just try new things, work harder. I really took this last year off. I didn't really feel like I grew that much. Yeah. I did achieve one accomplishment and that I had the time and bandwidth to like get my fitness in check. So I lost 35 pounds since
That's
September.
Awesome. Congrats.
That was huge. That was huge for me.
Do you feel better mentally? Because,
so much better
you're
mentally.
in shape. And I always feel like when I'm in shape, I feel like I'm on it, right?
When you're eating right, your mind just fires faster. You're just focused and lean, right? You're just like a hunter again. I don't want to be complacent. So don't let you get complacent. But a lot of the dreams come true. And I feel like I quenched my thirst. I always wanted to be seen and taken seriously and just be the guy. And I feel like I kind of got that at a young age. And now it's like, none of that stuff matters as much. Like I got the sick car and now I'm selling it because it's like, that wasn't a very smart financial decision and like doesn't bring me much, and even though I love cars. And then all the PR and I threw a crazy birthday party with the coolest video and it was like a very immature Michael and you grow a lot. And now you think, okay, like how do I build a way bigger business? How do I take care of my family better? How do I position myself to be able to support my girlfriend or like future wife one day, maybe? I don't know. Right. So you just become more of an adult, right? And you bring those calculations into play versus being like the young frat guy who sold his company.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, right? Just getting it out of your system. You can say you do it.
Yes.
And then you tried it. You don't have to go back because you know what it's like, but to not try it and then to be like, well, it's always in the back of your head. At least you can try it and then just, I don't need it anymore. I don't want it anymore. I'm done. This is where I want to go now.
It's great. Like I got my thirst quenched. Like my ego kind of died. It's like, I'm comfortable. So proud. Like anybody can look me up online and see what I've done. I don't need to pitch myself anymore. That was the best thing. I don't need to explain myself anymore in a room, right? I am who I am and I did what I did. And now I can be just myself, right? And I'm figuring myself out. I'm still trying to learn, right? What motivates me. And to be honest, all these things we talked about, and they just feel like a blur. And they really feel like a blur. And sometimes I don't even know how I pulled it off. I really don't.
I was going to ask, like, does it still feel real that you're on Forbes 30 under 30? Does that actually feel real? Or is that just like, wait, that happened? Kind of like you said, just a blur.
It was insane for me
when
it was insane for me when it happened, because it was pre our future Morning Brew exit. It was like, I got it right before I was like insane. Like what I was doing earned me that spot. I don't know what happened. I think someone like influential referred me, and I didn't apply. I don't even think I even tried to apply for it. Somebody from Forbes reached out to me and said, you got to apply. You're a very qualified candidate. Kind of knew I would get it. I got a Twitter DM of all places. Nowhere else. Really? I'd never checked my Twitter DMs. I had like less than 1,000 followers. And I saw this editor at Forbes reach out to me. He's like, you got to apply. The deadline's in a week. And I'm like, fuck, maybe I'm going to get it. And it was one morning, I was up at 5 a.m. because I was jet lagged, and I was on the elliptical, just like being super excited about life, being positive and optimistic. And I saw the email come through, and it was life-changing. Definitely life-changing from like a branding perspective for yourself. It's just sick. It's sick as fuck. It's a badge. But then like all things in life, you get the Ferrari, right? And then it's like, you get the mansion. And it's like, okay, I want a bigger mansion, right? It's just one of those things you can check off, and everyone should aspire to check those things off, because everybody wants to experience it, like something like that, right? Like everybody wants it, but then the people who have it, it's just kind of normal. And to be honest, there are some parts of the process of that list that aren't as legitimate as you think, right? Like they get some criticism for sure. Morning Brew did a big hit piece on it, so with Dan Toomey. So I don't know, pretty life-changing for me. I think a lot of people still aspire to be on it because it's really that sign that you're young and you're making it in the world. But yeah, I'm very grateful for it. I really am. I really, really am. I feel so lucky, man. It just feels like a blur. Damn.
And then I want to pivot back because you mentioned something a little bit ago, just talking about with our future, you're talking to some of the smartest entrepreneurs in the world that are doing massive things, really trying to change the world, really trying to do something big. So what is that process like when you tell their story on the podcast? It's obviously you're not just getting whatever's on the internet, but you're talking to them right in person. You're getting a better understanding of what they're doing. So can you walk me through kind of the research and what goes on behind the scenes to really get that 30-minute podcast down to a T and really have all this more or less exclusive information that you can't find about the company on the internet?
Yeah, I mean, like I'd say 80% of the people like we talk to, occasionally we've been doing it where we don't talk to them because it speeds up the production process and we just kind of take our insights on their model. The biggest thing is me and Simi have chemistry. We built a business together. We're very good friends. We live together. Like not many co-founders have the same experience as us. We have many of the same friends. We did everything together. Like we're very close. So we have very good synergy between each other as podcast hosts. And that's the most important thing. And then, Simi shares kind of his points. I share mine. It comes very naturally. And, an hour of prep work on the person and the company and the business model goes a very long way. And like coming up with more anecdotes about other businesses that work as clips. So it was for sure great that we had that synergy. And that's just kind of how it works. We talk to these people. We learn. We're very good at asking questions. We both come from an interviewing background. We're both very knowledgeable about startups and business. We know the questions to ask. We know the tough questions to ask. So that's what makes it good. So we're able to extract information very effectively because we've been doing it for years.
Yeah. The synergy. And then also what you said earlier is that both of you aren't the same people. You complement each other. So that works well with the podcast because you're not just saying the same thing over and over, but you have different perspective, different takes, and the synergy makes it so it's not an argument, but more of just constantly complementing one another to make the overall product.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
All right. Advice to your 18-year-old self. What would you tell yourself before going to college?
If I had told myself advice that I had learned now, I don't think I would have been as successful. I honestly don't think so. Because if I had told myself like everything I had learned up to this point, I wouldn't have had like the gumption, the confidence, and the delusion to go out and try and position this thing and try and build this thing. And I needed that. You need to be loud and brazen and brash with how you go out and get older people to take you seriously and get the world to care about your idea. And one of the biggest things Simi always tells me that he learned from me was like, you have to be extremely confident, shouldn't be humble, right? And I wouldn't want to go pollute my 18-year-old's mind. I'd want to be, just go and be crazy, right? Just go and get it, right? Go and take life by the handlebars because you just got to know what you don't know and you'll learn a lot along the way. But I wouldn't want to pollute my young mind with like the adult things that I've learned now and the realism I have about business. It was the idealism that got me to where I was and the passion, the pure drive, right? But yeah, I don't even know what I would say. What would you say to yourself 2 years ago, 3 years ago? What are you, 20?
23. I would tell myself, just do, don't think. That's kind of my motto.
And
Just do, don't think.
Honestly, I feel the same way. It's like I would say the same thing.
The more stuff I do, I find the more opportunities end up, or the more I realize, wait, this is an opportunity. I just have to take it. I just have to do it. Don't think too much. It's almost like constantly reaffirming that it is an opportunity. Then more things happen. It's like a domino effect, and it's exciting, and it makes life more enjoyable. So yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. So you said you got 10 months left for our future. So kind of what's next? Thinking about maybe the next couple of years, I guess. What are your ambitions now? What are you thinking about now when you think about the future?
Look, I know how to build a company. I know how to identify good talent. I know how to execute. I know how to sell. I know how to pitch, position, attract. So I have all the tools in my tool set to go and do whatever the fuck I want to do. Like, I truly believe that I can do anything. But even though I know I can do anything, it's got to be something I care deeply about and I'm passionate about. And with our future, it was just pure passion to get it off the ground. And I really want to find something else like that. And I think my biggest fear is not being able to find that again. But I know deep down I will. So I go all in on things. I get obsessed with things. Like recently, whether that's been the fitness thing or getting into golf, I've just become obsessed with golf and getting better. And I want to find that same mechanic with another business idea. I really do. And I'm an angel investing in and advising my friend's business, and they're trying to disintermediate real estate with cutting out brokers and with all the news that's going on with realty fees getting cut, commissions. And it got me so excited seeing their deck and seeing how raw and bad it was, because it's like, I can now give you the advice about how to make a sexy, amazing deck that's going to get people to respond. Like, I can connect you to investors. It was getting me excited again, right? I'm feeling that. I'm ready to run. So I want to continue to crush it for Morning Brew. I want to build a really great division that they can rely on for years to come in terms of like our agency and potentially continuing our future brand after my time there. And I really want to finish things off with the bang. I want to double our revenue this year. I want to launch a new service offering. We're focusing on a new agency offering around social proof and case studies. I want to crush it, and I want to keep meeting these amazing founders and doing this podcast and just doing hard work and living the best life I can, enjoying life and being fit and trying new things. And I know
that
something
gets me fired up.
Dude, I know something else is going to come up. I know it is. Something else is going to loop me into a rabbit hole and build the next version of Michael Sikand that's going to be bigger and better, and everything is just going to be bigger and better next time. It's America, bro. It's always better being bigger and better, dude. We always want that.
Dude, I can't wait to watch it happen. It's going to happen. That's for sure.
Thank you.
Michael, I appreciate it. Obviously, where can people find you, follow you? LinkedIn, Twitter, where you're active?
Instagram at Michael Sikand, Sikand, Twitter as well. LinkedIn's the same. And check out our podcast on YouTube, Our Future Podcast, or on Spotify, Apple, whatever it is. So yeah, check it out. And all of our social handles are at Our Future HQ if you want to check out the short form content that made us famous.
Well, we appreciate it, Michael. Thank you for coming on. And to all the listeners and viewers out there, thank you. And we'll see you on the next episode of Next Big Thing HQ. So long.
Will do. Cheers.